I decided to escape the city for a while. A quaint farmhouse Airbnb outside a small New England town caught my eye. The charm of the old place was appealing. I thought it would be perfect for inspiration after my separation. I booked a month-long stay and drove out there a few weeks ago. When I arrived, everything felt calm. I set up my workspace in the sunlit corner of the living room. I could hear the wind rustling the trees outside. It was just me and the fields, and I felt safe. On the second night, I woke up suddenly. A loud crash from the kitchen jolted me upright. My heart raced in the dark. I wondered if it was just the wind. Still, unease crept in. I grabbed my phone and looked at the time. Past midnight. I got out of bed slowly, listening carefully. I tiptoed to the kitchen, my bare feet echoed on the creaky floorboards. I peered around the corner into the shadows. The kitchen was dark. I flipped the light switch, and a chair lay knocked over on the floor. Nothing else seemed out of place. I sighed, thinking it was just my imagination. I locked the back door, which I noticed was slightly ajar. I shook off the fear. The next few days were strange. I tried to work during the day, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I'd glance out the window often, but there was never anyone there. Just trees swaying in the wind. My reflection seemed off, too. Sometimes, I felt cold spots in different corners of the house. I told myself it was just an old place. Then came the knocks. They started softly, like a rustling breeze, then grew louder. Some nights, I lay in bed listening to the thudding on my door. I'd sit up, my heart pounding. Each time I opened the door, no one was there. The silence of the house surrounded me. I thought I was losing it, but the fear crept in deeper. I felt cold sweats forming. My hands shook as I closed the door again, locking it tight. The knocks continued, even when I locked myself in. One night, I stood in the hallway. The air felt thick and heavy. I looked at the door, feeling uneasy. Then, I saw him. A figure stood at the end of the hall in the fading light. I blinked, and he was gone. Just like that. I didn't know what to think. Was it real? Had my mind created him? I wanted to rationalize what I saw, but something inside me felt different. Now, standing in that hallway, I can still hear those soft knocks that echo in my mind. Did the farmhouse hold remnants of its past? I couldn't say for sure. I just knew it still haunted me. I spent the next day trying to shake off the eerie feeling that clung to me. I took a long walk outside, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. The field stretched on endlessly, golden wheat swaying in the breeze. Yet, no matter how far I walked, I couldn't escape the unease brewing in my chest that I decided to go into town. A quaint little shop caught my attention, and I stepped inside. The owner, an older woman with kind eyes, greeted me with a smile. I introduced myself and mentioned my stay at the farmhouse. "Oh, the old Whitaker place?" she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's seen better days. People say it's got a history." "History?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She glanced toward the window, then back at me. "Some say it's haunted. A man died there many years ago. They say he still roams the halls." My heart sank. I laughed nervously, trying to shake off what she said. Ghost stories weren't real. But the way she stared at me made my skin crawl. I bought a few items and headed back to the farmhouse, my mind racing. That night, the knocks returned, louder and more insistent. I lay in bed, tried to block them out with my pillow, but it was no use. They were relentless. I finally stood up, heart pounding, telling myself I would find out what was causing it. I turned on the hall light and walked to the bedroom door. This time, I opened it slowly, peering out into the dimly lit hallway. There it was again, an unsettling presence, lurking somewhere within the shadows. I stepped outside my door and felt a cool breeze sweep past me, sending chills down my spine. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The only response was the echo of my own words. I took a hesitant step forward, the floor creaked beneath me. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of movement. That's when I noticed something unusual near the staircase. A small, worn leather book lay open on the ground. I reached down to pick it up, my fingers trembling. The worn pages were filled with entries, written in neat script. "He waits for the one to feel him," the last entry read. My heart raced as the realization hit me. This wasn't just a book, it felt like a warning. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the book slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. I backed away, fright coursing through me. The knocks began again, louder this time, reverberating through the walls like an alarm. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and cut out, plunging the hallway into an oppressive blackness. Holding my breath, I stumbled back toward my room, feeling the wall for balance. The knock stopped, but a new sound filled the silence, a low, raspy breathing. I knew I wasn't alone. I stood frozen, heart racing, barely able to take a breath. The heavy silence intensified, interrupted only by that unnerving sound. It felt like a pair of eyes were watching me, even if I couldn't see anything in the dark. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, my voice shaking. No answer came, just that breathing, closer now that I had to act. Gripping the wall with one hand, I took a step back, then another, desperate to reach the safety of my room. But as I turned, a sudden noise stopped me in my tracks, a shuffling sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floorboards right behind me. My blood ran cold that I spun around, squinting into the darkness. "Show yourself!" I shouted, trying to sound brave, but my voice betrayed me, cracking under pressure. I felt like a fool, yelling into a void, but as much as I wanted to run, something kept me rooted on the spot. The shuffling stopped, and the air grew thicker around me. My instincts screamed to flee, but I controlled my breathing, slowly reaching for my phone in my pocket. I needed light. Just as I pulled it out, the screen came to life, illuminating my immediate area. What I saw stopped my breath again. At the base of the stairs, a shadow shifted, taking a step toward me. It didn't look human, more like a figure made of smoke, swirling and coiling as if it were alive. My heart slammed against my chest as the shadow raised an arm, pointing toward me. I stumbled backward, my instincts kicking in. I rushed to my room, slamming the door shut behind me, racing to lock it. I threw my weight against it, listening as that horrid breathing returned, now muffled by the wood. Panic set in. I shouldn't have laughed off the old woman's warning. This was no ordinary farmhouse. Whatever was here, it wasn't friendly. I frantically scanned the room for anything I could use, my mind racing to place an escape route. As I caught my breath, I remembered the book. It felt critical, like some kind of connection to whatever was haunting this place. I rushed over to where I had dropped it. The pages fluttered, as though they had been disturbed. The last entry stood out to me again: "He waits for the one to feel him." What did that mean? Surely it couldn't mean me. I hadn't wanted to feel anything. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, but I pushed them down. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled violently. I froze, my heart thundering in my ears. The shadow was trying to get in. I tightened my grip on the book and dashed toward the window, checking to see if I could climb out. But as I peered through the glass, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Outside, under the dim light of the moon, stood a figure. It was tall and gangly, dressed in what looked like old, tattered clothes. I swallowed hard, breath caught in my throat as I realized it wasn't just the house that had secrets. Just then, the door creaked, shifting slightly as though something heavy pressed against it. I backed away slowly, clutching the book to my chest. The figure outside stood still, staring at me, its face obscured by shadows. I knew I had to find out what it wanted, but part of me dreaded the answer. I wasn't safe. Not at the farmhouse. And I could feel it in my bones. Whatever was happening, it was only just beginning. I pressed my back against the wall, still clutching the book like a lifeline. The rattling at the door grew more frantic, and I could hear the shadow outside whispering something low and incoherent. My mind raced. Was it trying to communicate, or was it luring me closer? The icy grip of fear wrapped around me. I backed away a few more steps, glancing at the window. The figure was still there, motionless, but I could feel its gaze piercing through the glass. It was as if it were waiting. Waiting for something. That I turned my attention to the book in my hands again. Maybe it held the key to understanding this entity, to understanding why it targeted me. Carefully, I flipped through the pages, struggling to focus as the noise from the door grew louder, a raw urgency resonating with my own frantic heartbeat. I needed to find something, anything that could help me. One entry caught my eye, an old illustration of what seemed to be a gathering of shadowy figures around a woman, her face twisted in fear. The caption read, "The Offering." I shuddered. What was this offering about? Was that what they wanted from me? A loud crash jolted me from my thoughts. The door had splintered slightly, shifting on its hinges. Panic surged through me. I couldn't stay trapped in this room much longer. Clenching the book to my chest, I looked toward the window again. The ground outside seemed far too distant, but I had no choice. I had to try. As I moved towards the window, I suddenly felt a chilling breeze sweep through the room, wrapping around my ankles. My breath hitched. The shadow was closer now, barely visible through the dim light. It loomed larger, almost spilling into the room as my heart raced. "Please, just leave me alone," I yelled, my voice wavering yet firm. I wasn't sure if I was convincing the entity or just trying to convince myself. Then I heard a voice. It was quiet, almost soothing. "You must listen. He calls for you." I froze. Who was calling for me? And why? Panic mixed with an unsettling curiosity. I had to know. Just then, something shifted outside. The tall figure moved forward, walking slowly toward the window. I stood paralyzed, my hands trembling as I gripped the book tighter. In that moment, a flash of lightning illuminated the night, and everything appeared clearer. For a split second that I saw his face. It was just as I'd feared, a visage twisted with a sad sort of longing, eyes reflecting centuries of sorrow. But there was something else in those eyes, something that spoke directly to me, as if I could feel his desperation. Before I could think, before I could breathe, the door burst open, shards of wood flying across the room. I spun around, heart racing, my gaze landing on the darkened silhouette filling the doorway. It took a step forward into the light of my phone, then everything went dark. Waves of panic washed over me. I heard the whispers rise, drowning out everything else. Come to him. And I knew I had to make a choice. I stumbled back, blinded by the darkness that swallowed the room. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing louder in the stillness around me. The book slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. "Who's there?" I called into the void, my voice trembling. I felt utterly exposed, as if the shadows themselves were listening, watching, waiting. A chill slithered through the air, making my skin crawl. I could sense the presence still in the room, a heavy weight pressing down on me. "Answer me!" I shouted, but only silence replied, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, I glimpsed a faint shimmer to my right, an outline forming in the darkness. My breath hitched as the figure from before took shape, the man with the sorrowful eyes. I strained to see him more clearly, but the shadows curled around him like smoke, obscuring any details. "Why?" I managed to whisper, desperate to understand. "It is not about why," he replied, his voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "It is about what must be done." "What must be done?" I repeated, confusion tearing at me. I wanted to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. His presence was overwhelming, a gravitational force pulling me toward him. The whispers intensified. He calls for you. Join him. Against my will, my heart felt a strange yearning, a compulsion to move closer. I shook my head violently. No. I want tea. In response, the shadows inched forward, tendrils reaching out as if seeking to envelop me. I forced myself to take a step back, desperate for distance. My hand found the wall, rough and solid beneath my palm. Then I remembered the book. I bent low, fumbling for it in the darkness. As I grasped the leather cover, a strange warmth surged through me, something that felt like protection. I flipped it open, searching for a passage that could explain what was happening. My fingers raced across the pages, feeling the texture of the worn paper under my touch. I halted when I spotted another illustration, an expansive circle, figures standing with arms raised. Each person appeared to be entranced by something in the center. My stomach churned. The caption read, "The Sacrifice." I whipped my head back up, my heart racing again as I locked eyes with the figure, who seemed to be closer now. "What do you want from me?" I yelled, my voice laced with defiance. A flicker of sadness crossed his face. "You have a choice, a duty. The offering must be made." Before I could process his words, the shadows surged forward again, overwhelming me. I felt a pull, an urgency to step toward him. I swayed, teetering on the edge of both trepidation and temptation. When I saw it. A glimmering object nestled in the book, a key, ancient and ornate. My breath caught in my throat. What did it unlock? What was I supposed to do with it? The whispers grew louder, almost chanting now. I was trapped between worlds, my fate teetering on a knife's edge. I had to act, but I didn't understand the full weight of my choices. "Choose." The figure commanded, his voice rising above the din, crashing against my resolve. Then, with a sharp crack, the darkness split apart. Light returned like a flood, and I was momentarily blinded. The figure faded away, leaving me gasping in the light, but his words lingered. I was left with questions that only deepened the darkness surrounding me. Would I heed his call, or find a way to escape? The light washed over me, and for a moment, I thought I was free. But as my eyes adjusted, confusion filled the room. I was still in the same place, the dusty old library, but the atmosphere changed. The tension seemed thicker now, charged with an energy I couldn't understand. I turned to the book, still open on the floor. The key was now gone. My heart raced at the realization. It was as if it had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. I frantically searched the ground, but my fingers brushed against only dust and paper. The whispers had quieted, but something else slithered through the silence. A sense of urgency gnawed at me. I needed to know what the key unlocked. That shimmering mystery tugged at my mind, pulling me deeper into a rabbit hole I was dying to avoid. I hesitated, then picked up the book again. This time, I flipped through it more deliberately, looking for something, a sign, an answer. Illustrations of strange symbols, ritualistic drawings, and disconnected narratives passed beneath my fingers. None of it made sense. My attention caught on a page that, unlike the others, was blank. I flipped it multiple times, searching for a clue that might help. When a sharp sound sliced through the silence, a creak coming from behind me. I froze. The hairs on my neck stood up. Someone was in the library with me. "Hello?" I called, forcing my voice to stay steady. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, almost drowning out everything else. I scanned the room, eyes darting from shadow to shadow, but saw nothing. Yet, anxiety coiled tightly in my stomach. Cautiously, I returned my gaze to the book. A chill washed over me again, and I noticed something else. Small letters began to appear on the blank page. They glowed faintly, as if inviting me to read. I squinted, leaning closer. "It begins with a choice, the key to the path lies within," the letters spelled out, accompanied by an omen-like diagram. My pulse quickened. Was this a sign? Or another trick? Then, just as abruptly, the letters stopped glowing, and darkness pooled around the edges of the page, threatening to consume the words. I had to figure this out, had to understand what it meant. I flipped back to the illustration of the circle. The figures inside were frozen in an expression of rapture or horror. What was this sacrifice? Why was I drawn into it? The creak came again, this time louder. I spun around. A figure lurked at the far end of the room. I squinted, trying to make out who or what it was. My stomach dropped. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling again. The figure shifted. I couldn't breathe as a wave of dread overtook me. "You must choose," it said, but its voice sounded like a dark echo, the same as the figure I'd seen before. Then I saw a glimmer of metal in its hand. I couldn't tell if it was the key, but something in my gut told me it was important. Just as quickly as the figure appeared, it faded back into the shadows, leaving me alone and even more lost. That I turned back to the book, desperate to find answers. But the words had vanished again, leaving me only with the chilling weight of my own uncertainty. There had to be a way to make sense of this. What did I have to do? Suddenly, the walls around me seemed to pulse, and I felt the air shift ominously. I was running out of time. The next choice was mine to make. The air around me felt thick and heavy, almost like it was pressing down on my shoulders. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I moved instinctively, my hands trembling as I searched the corners of the library, half expecting the figure to reappear. The book lay in front of me, its silent answers mocking my confusion. "Choose," the echoing voice rang through my mind. Choose what? There were no clear paths, only shadows, and unanswered questions. My chest tightened. I needed to act. With a deep breath, I picked up the book again and focused on the glowing letters that had just momentarily vanished. The key to the path lies within. I needed to understand what that meant. My fingers traced the outlines of the illustrations, feeling a faint warmth from them as if they were alive somehow. "Why can't you just give me a straight answer?" I whispered into the stillness. The words seemed to linger, mocking my desperation. I flipped through the faded pages, half expecting something else to reveal itself. Then, as I turned another page, I found a folded map tucked into the spine of the book. Surprised, I pulled it out. It was old, crinkled, and covered with strange markings. My heart raced. This could be a clue, a way to figure out what I needed to choose. That I opened it carefully, and my eyes widened. The map depicted a layout of the library but with a strange symbol drawn in red ink in the center. The symbol matched one of the illustrations from the book, a jagged circle with lines radiating like rays from the sun. I felt a tug in my gut. It had to be significant. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the library. My pulse quickened. I turned, half expecting to see the figure again. "Is anyone there?" My voice trembled. No answer came, just the ghostly stillness of the room. Ignoring the fear creeping up my spine, I stepped toward the source of the noise. The cold air brushed against my skin. I saw nothing at first, but then I noticed a door slightly ajar behind a stack of books. It had not been there before. The sight of it sent chills down my back. This was it. The choice that in that moment, I faced a decision. Clutching the map tightly, I could either follow this new path or head back to the familiar chaos of the book. I could feel a weight pulling me toward the door, promising answers or at least new horrors. My instincts screamed at me to go, but that voice echoing from the shadows still haunted me. What if this choice was the wrong one? As I stood there, the library seemed to shift as if it was holding its breath, waiting for my next move. Encouraged by the urge to discover the truth, I steeled myself and pushed the door open, heart racing in anticipation. There was no turning back now, and then everything went dark. I blinked a few times, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. An eerie stillness wrapped around me, like a thick fog. I could feel the coolness of the floor beneath me, hard and unforgiving, which only added to my discomfort. I sat up, disoriented. Had I fallen? I listened intently, but nothing penetrated the silence. Light flickered ahead, and I crawled toward it. The faint glow seemed to pulse, beckoning me forward. My heart raced as I got closer, and I could make out shapes in the shimmering light. It felt alive, as though it was drawing energy from the very air around me. I pushed through the uncertainty, feeling the weight of the map in my pocket. As I reached the source of the glow, the scene around me shifted. I was no longer in the library. Instead, I found myself in a narrow corridor lined with wooden doors, each one adorned with that same strange symbol, the jagged circle. It felt surreal, spinning with an energy I couldn't comprehend. I pressed my back against the wall, peering down the hall. "Where am I?" I muttered, though I knew no one would answer. The adrenaline surged, mingling with a sense of fear. I noticed that one door stood slightly ajar, whispering a silent invitation. Cautiously, I approached it. I could hear soft murmurs coming from within. It sounded like a conversation, but the words didn't make sense. I paused, my heart pounding in my chest. Should I knock? What if it was another trap? Then I saw a flicker of movement in the crack of the door. I pushed it open just a bit more, peeking inside. My breath caught in my throat. A figure stood in the middle of the room, a shadow thrown against the walls. It was obscured, but there was no mistaking the shape. "Help me," the figure whispered. Its voice was low, almost a rasp, yet it carried a weight that drew my attention. I stepped back, hesitation flooding my thoughts. Was this a trick? Before I could decide, the air shifted, and the door slammed shut behind me. My pulse quickened. I turned to run, but it was too late. The shadows around me twisted, dark tendrils reaching out, trapping me against the wall. Panic swept through my limbs as I struggled against the unseen chains. "Choose." The familiar voice echoed once more, harsh and demanding. "Choose one or all will be lost." I froze, confusion swirling within. Choose what? The glowing map burned against my pocket, and instinctively, I reached for it. The red symbol pulsed in rhythm with the frantic beating of my heart. Suddenly, my options flooded back. Find out who was in the room or confront the symbols that had led me here. Who was the figure? What was at stake? The urgency overwhelmed me, a pressing need to understand my next move. That's when I felt the presence behind me. Someone was watching me again. I spun around, every nerve ending sparking with dread. A figure stood just beyond the shadows, a silhouette with no discernible features. My breath hitched in my throat. I wanted to scream, to shout for help, but my voice faltered. The figure remained still, but I could feel its eyes boring into me, filled with accusation or perhaps desperation. "Why are you here?" it asked, the voice hauntingly echoing in the small space. I don't know," I stammered, words escaping me as fear clawed up my spine. I followed the light. The figure seemed to consider this, slowly stepping closer. The dim light flickered again, revealing a hint of its form. The jagged circle symbol was not just on the doors, it was carved into the flesh of its wrist, glowing faintly. My heart raced. This was no ordinary person. I could feel the energy crackling between us, the air thick with something unexplainable. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Choice. You need to make a choice. It's the only way out." The figure extended a hand, and in that moment, I saw a glimmer of hope mingled with something darker. It was as if the choice I had to make rested in the lines of its palm. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the corridor, making us both jump. The walls rattled, and the shadows twisted violently. I turned, heart threatening to leap from my chest. The door I had entered through was gone, replaced by a wall of swirling darkness. "What did you do?" I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. I didn't do anything. I'm trapped here too. The urgency pressing around us intensified. I could feel the dark tendrils pulling tighter, threatening to suffocate us both. I gripped the map in my pocket, wanting desperately to find a way out. Flashes of symbols danced in my mind. What were they? They had to mean something, had to lead me towards a solution. "Help me, please," the figure begged, its voice filled with a raw desperation. "Choose to save yourself or choose me." The weight of its words crashed over me. I had thought I was here to help someone, but now I was faced with a horrific dilemma. How do I choose? I shouted back, voice breaking. "You must trust your instincts," it yelled. "The map will guide you if you let it." I took a shaky breath and pulled the glowing map from my pocket, holding it before me. The red symbol throbbed rapidly, drawing the darkness toward it like a moth to flame. Suddenly, vibrant lines began to form on the paper, and I could see multiple paths branching out from where I stood. Then everything went silent. The figure's voice faded, replaced by a chilling whisper in my ear, "Choose wisely." I stood at the intersection in the map, feeling the oppressive weight of the moment pressing down on me. I could no longer hear the murmurs or the figures pleading. The path ahead glittered with possibilities. That S when I saw it, the jagged circle symbol pulsing on the map, blurring everything else out. I didn't know what it meant, but I couldn't ignore the pull it had on me. "Which path?" I whispered, realizing I was running out of time. I didn't have much of a choice left, the darkness was coming. I took a deep breath, focusing on the glowing map in my hands, urging myself to trust my instincts. The paths before me shimmered, blurring together in frantic movement. There had to be a way out of this darkness. With each pulse, the jagged circle on the map seemed to reach out, begging me to understand. "Choose wisely," the whispers echoed in my mind. "You may lose everything." The fear that clawed at my insides only intensified when I felt the shadowy tendrils tighten around me. I couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. I scanned the paths again, feeling the weight of 1,000 choices hovering over me. My heart raced as I recalled the figure I had seen earlier, the one in the middle of the room. I hesitated for a moment, grappling with the idea of saving myself versus helping someone else. Why this? Why now? I whispered, panic seeping into my voice. The oppressive darkness made every breath feel like a chore. Then, suddenly, clarity washed over me. I thought of that blurry figure, the one urging me to choose a soul like mine, lost and searching for a way out. I looked deeper into the glowing paths while keeping my eyes trained on the pulsating jagged symbol. I realized it wasn't just about me or about them, it was about a balance. Without overthinking it, I extended my hand towards the pathway aligned with the jagged circle, trusting the map's energy to guide me. The instant I touched the illustration, everything exploded into brightness. The darkness fell away like mist, and a surge of force swept through me that I felt myself being pulled forward, and then I was stumbling onto solid ground. I blinked, trying to adjust to my surroundings. A familiar space. The library. But something felt different. It wasn't consumed by that chilling sense of dread anymore. The air felt lighter, almost electric, as if a barrier had been severed. "Is it over?" I muttered. "Have I escaped?" I stood there for a moment, having survived what felt like an impossible ordeal. The book lay on the floor, closed and unassuming, as if it hadn't just held a realm of terror. I couldn't shake the thought of the figure I'd seen. Had I made the right choice? Had I left it behind, or had it found a way to escape in my wake? The thought lingered uncomfortably in my mind that I stepped out of the library, feeling the solid ground beneath my feet. The tendrils of darkness had melted away, replaced instead by flickering candlelight in the distance. I walked toward the flickering light, curiosity mixing with caution. Could I really emerge from this unscathed? As I crossed the threshold, shadows swayed and flickered in the corners of the room. I turned to look, half expecting to see that sorrowful figure standing behind me. But there was nothing but silence. I was safe, or so I thought. The unsettling feeling that settled into the pit of my stomach hinted at lingering questions. Where did that shadow go? What was it that called to me? Had I truly escaped, or was I running toward another perilous encounter? As I exited the library, light poured in from large windows, illuminating the farmhouse with a golden glow. I stepped outside, the air fresh and brimming with promise. The field stretched endlessly before me, swaying gently in the evening breeze. I could breathe again, and for that moment, it felt like a victory, yet, I still found myself glancing back at the farmhouse, an inexplicable tugging in my heart. I'd faced shadows real or imagined anything was possible in this strange world. Had they truly retreated, or would those from the darker corners persist? I carried a strange weight with me now, a lingering uncertainty, one that would forever hover like ghosts just out of sight. As I drove away from that old Whitaker place with the farmhouse fading in my rearview mirror, I felt free but changed. I didn't know if what I had experienced was real or just a figment of my mind's turmoil. I only knew I would likely never return. The questions remained, intertwining with new possibilities, teasing me with their eternal mystery. And as I looked ahead at the open road, there was a comfort in knowing that I had survived however uncertain it felt. I moved forward into a light that, while unpredictable, promised a journey that was entirely my own.